The eighth commandment tells us to not bear false witness. We understand everything our neighbors do in the best possible light. This was, we had hoped, to be a debate. But the assemblywoman declined our invitation for reasons of her own. That means that it is now a town hall where we get to ask questions of one who is seeking high office. And that is to your advantage so that you can ask your own questions and hear directly from Ms. Simpkins what her ideas may be. But we disparage no one, especially anyone who is not here able to defend themselves. There's also no cussing, or if you're northern, no cursing. So there's no cussing, there's no disparaging, but everything else is on the table. We will do this for about an hour, and then afterwards we will have a really nice cookout out in front of the church where everyone is invited to stay, speak to Ms. Simpkins, speak to me, ask any questions of me that you may have. It is a blessing, an honor, and a privilege to host you here today. Thank you for being here. Thank you, Ms. Simpkins, for coming and being a part of this conversation. We are glad you're here. Is it on?
Testing.
There you are.
Thank you so much, Ms. Foster, Pastor Reverend Dr. Foster. I really appreciate this. It's an honor to have been invited to this, and I am really thankful for everyone who's come here today. I know it's a busy holiday weekend, so I appreciate you taking time out of your weekend to come here. It means a lot. I am now going to tell you a little bit about me. My name is Anathea Simpkins. I am a 17-year resident of Greenpoint, 13 years on Guernsey Street, 5 years on Newell, same cross streets, Norman and Meserole. And I am a mom. I have a 12-year-old son who's a student in the public schools in Greenpoint and now in 318. He's in middle school. He may show up to the barbecue later. And I have been in education my entire career. I've worked as a teacher. I've worked in bringing educational programs to school districts across the country. Most recently, I've worked in youth violence prevention and mental health advocacy for Sandy Hook Promise, and helped to bring violence prevention programs to over 200 school districts across the country. One of the things, thank you. One of the things that I like to say to people about leadership is that, and something I've learned about leading teams, is that the most important thing that you can do when you're leading is to make your team feel safe. And I also believe that that translates to political leadership. The most important thing that you can do is to make your team, who is your constituency, feel safe. And that's one of the reasons why I'm here today. Because I feel that there has been a lot more division in the last 4 years. There's a lot of putting people into buckets. And I believe that our senior citizens are being profoundly neglected. 25% of our seniors live below the poverty line in District 50. 44% of the last sentence of our children live below the poverty line. And we're receiving budget cuts to our schools. We're seeing more and more neglect. We're seeing our storefronts closed. We're seeing, as I don't like to say, 2 weed shops on every block illegal, and something needs to change. So I decided that I would throw my hat in the ring. I'm not a politician, but I am surrounded by brilliant people who are helping me. And I really appreciate the opportunity to be here today and to tell you about myself. I know that there have been a lot of things said about me since I decided to announce my candidacy, and I'm a 52-year-old woman, and I can speak for myself.
Woo! Yes. Thank you. Thank you very much. So, as we had announced that we were going to be doing this, I had encouraged people from my congregation and neighbors to say to me, what are your questions, especially if you couldn't make it here today. And just about everything that everybody has wanted to talk about are all bread and butter issues. Very, very close to home issues. So I'm going to start with one that I heard a lot about, which is bail reform. Mm-hmm. We have moved from, in our bail reform system, to cashless bail. Mm-hmm. That was part of the New York State Assembly's decision. And critics will say we now have more people committing crime, either violent crime, and judicial options have been taken away from judges, that it's mandatory that people who have caused problems, who have been violent, are let go immediately. When I am a liaison with the 94th Precinct, the NYPD clergy liaison, when I speak to the cops, they will express frustration about picking up people and then they are immediately let go. Most notably in this community is Christopher. He is out. He's already been causing problems in the neighborhood. So people who are proponents of cashless bail say it takes people who are poor and commit crimes or low-level offenses. They're not stuck in Rikers Island for months on end without any kind of action on their case. What are your thoughts about bail reform? And if you have things that you would like to change about that, what are the things you would like to change?
I'm glad you asked that question. We've been talking about that a lot in our office. And I think one of the biggest problems is that, and I'll say this, I might say this multiple times tonight, and I might say it about every single topic. Everything needs to have a good process. And the ripple effects of that process or any decision need to be thought out in advance before it's launched. Multiple things, as I said, I'll talk about tonight. Safety, things such as bail reform. What are we doing before we're putting these people back out into society? What are we doing to help to rehabilitate them? Are we providing mental health resources? Are we providing education? Are we providing jobs trainings? Everyone wants to have a purpose and be part of something. And if we're just launching people back into society, with the things that they came in with, then we're not doing a service to them. We're not doing a service to their neighbors. We're not doing a service to our community. It takes a community to help these situations. It takes a multidisciplinary effort in a community to help to change these things. It's not just one person. One thing I've learned in violence prevention is that these things can be prevented. It's not about putting a Band-Aid on it, it's about preventing it, and it's about thinking about how we can change it in a way that is meaningful and thoughtful and works best for everyone. So in gun violence prevention, which I've been could have prevented it. And there are warning signs in people who might commit crime that could have prevented it, that we could always intervene on if we work together as a community. So those are some things that I think about, that we really have to think about the ripple effects. We have to think about giving people jobs trainings. We also need to think about mental health is a huge issue. It is becoming a bigger issue with children right now. Since COVID, and I'll talk about this also ad nauseum, since COVID, suicide ideation has skyrocketed in children as young as 4th grade. That's what I'm seeing across the country and what I'm hearing about here. I've experienced it with my own child who didn't see his friends for a year. What does that do to social and emotional health of a child? And how does that carry through life? And we don't even know what the effects are going to be down the line of the children who have lived through COVID. Another topic, Christopher Boissard. I've had a few people ask me, about it. And we actually had a meeting with the captain at the 94th Precinct a couple weeks ago because I want to understand. I hear that it's complicated. I hear people don't want to touch the situation. Well, somebody has to, and somebody needs to work with people. I always say it's going to multidisciplinary approach is education, faith-based communities, community centers, law enforcement, and mental health. And we need to come together to try and figure out this situation. We can't just point fingers. The other thing I want to say is that there's a lot of chatter online, post complaint. This was as of 2 weeks ago. So people like to post about things, and I think that, and I understand there's fear in the community. Nobody should feel scared in their homeschool or community, full stop. But also, we need to remember, and something to understand, and I think a lot of people didn't know this before, I didn't realize it, is that when you call 911, that's not the same as filing a police complaint. So if you have a situation, you have to go in there and file a complaint, and that's how things are tracked.
I'm going to go back to my original question,
Yep.
which is bail reform,
Yep.
which was passed in New York State.
Yep.
That took away cash. It's now cashless payment. I agree with everything you said. Prevention, strong communities, make strong individuals, make us all safer. Gun prevention. I grew up hunting.
Yep.
Nobody needs, a 50-round clip to go hunting. Go to the grocery store. But what is your opinion about bail reform? And what would you do differently about bail reform now that we've seen the ripple effects? What is your policy? Would you give judges discretion when it is clear there's a problem and letting these people go?
If you're a violent offender, if you've committed domestic violence, if you've committed rape, sexual assault, then I believe that it needs to stay the way it is. It's the repeat offenders for petty crime and low, misdemeanors that I think needs to be considered, and also people who are coming from impoverished communities, and we don't want people to be languishing in Rikers, forgotten about. So something needs to change. But thinking about how it changes and thinking thoughtfully about who we're releasing, who we're not. And there's, two things can be true at the same time. Things are nuanced, and a lot of people like to make sweeping decisions about things and not think about, well, there is a gray area. And I think that's what needs to be thought about. Again, with the same thinking of what are we doing? What is the process? What is the rollout plan? That's what I say in, when I'm releasing a program, what is the rollout plan? What's the communications plan? What are the operations going to look like? Because in order for something to be effective, all those things have to be effective.
Okay, let's move on to another area, kind of related. The NYPD just graduated just over 500 rookies a couple of weeks ago, which is a fraction of what we are told that we need.
Yeah.
We have the smallest police force maybe in history. There are legitimate critiques to be made of the NYPD, policies and procedures, how they behave when people are expressing their rights to protest, such as at Columbia University and other places. But what are your thoughts about what do we do to have full staffing of the New York Police Department?
Incentives. I think that one of the other things is that, people are leaving because they also feel left behind. Because why are people leaving teaching? They don't feel respected. They don't feel valued. Why does anyone leave a job? For those same reasons. And, one of the things that I've thought about a lot, especially in the work that I've done in working with law enforcement, is that you go too far one way, then things are going to happen like this. We don't have people who even want to go into the force. You have people who say all cops are bastards. Excuse me, I cursed.
It's okay.
And teaching their children that all cops are butts. I'm sorry, that's offensive. And in working, and then if you're complaining that the police aren't there when you need them. Are there bad people? Are there bad police? Are there good police? Yes, both are true. Are there good people? Yes. Are there bad people? Yes. But you can't make sweeping judgments because of situations. The other thing I want to say, too, is, one of the things that I've experienced, in my career, I've experienced it firsthand in California when I was bringing this program there in San Diego. They experience San Jose, well, in San Diego, too, a lot of gang violence. And I was bringing the program to one of the schools in San Jose in the district, and they were in such a panic for getting this program because it was the only way they were going to be able to manage situations for, even mental health situations, bullying, anything, because the funding was completely cut for their school resource officers. Nobody in the school was trained in how to, and they're required by law to not lock their doors, so anybody can come in off the street and these people aren't trained in how to deal with it. So that's how, perchance, the tip of the iceberg in all the situations that I dealt with are a school shooting. But, somebody can come in off the street and they're not trained and they were desperate. These are people who are very liberal people. California is a very liberal state, but that's what happens when you swing the pendulum too far one way. Things like this happen. So I don't purport to know everything about the NYPD but I know that people want to feel valued and people want to feel a part of the community and they want to contribute, and when they feel that they're not appreciated in anything, then you're going to lose people.
Absolutely. Thank you. There was a bill that was introduced before the terrorist attack attacks on October 7th, by the terrorist attacks by Hamas, called Not on Our Dime. And it has not passed the state assembly yet, but it was a bipartisan bill that was saying that not-for-profit organizations, if they give money to Israel that supports the military or the building of settlements in Palestinian land, on Palestinian land, that the not-for-profits would lose their not-for-profit tax-exempt status. It's a long shot bill. Since October 7th, they have tried to resurrect it, change it, and we have seen disparagement between Free Palestine from the river to the sea. We've seen a rise in anti-Semitism, and we've seen a conflation of all things being anti-Semitic that may not be anti-Semitic, but anti-Semitism is on the rise. As someone who's seeking to serve in the State House, would you support the Not on Our Dime bill, and why or why not?
I would not support it. I think that it's anti-Semitic. One of the reasons why I'm here today is actually because one of my close friends, I have many close friends in the community who are Jewish. I have many close friends who are of Muslim descent. And one of the reasons why I'm here is because after October 7th, there was the rise in anti-Semitism in the district. And a good friend of mine went to our assembly member and said, can you please speak out on just saying there's no room for hate? Full stop. There's no room for hate toward anybody. And in good faith, this person just wanted our leader to make people in the community feel safe. And that person wasn't asking for any other commentary. It didn't need to be about, what's going on, the horrors overseas. I don't mean to downplay it. And basically had one meeting and never heard from the office again. And first of all, to not respond to somebody, that's what your job is. And then to not respond to someone who is legitimately scared to send their children to school, which I have heard from many, many people, is criminal to me. And that's one of the reasons why I'm here, because the job of a leader, especially when you're a hyper-local leader in a community, is that you have to respond. You have to step up and say something. And to not do that means that you don't even offer constituent services at all.
In the community that you are asking us to hire you to serve, and it is service.
Yes, it is.
We have the three great Abrahamic faiths here, and everybody kind of gets along.
Yeah.
What would you do to strengthen the relationships? I mean, that's a lot of our job.
Yeah.
But I think y'all can amen this. The jerks make the news, right? Amen?
Yeah.
And the people who are just trying to build community, to promote understanding, to see what we have in common, we don't get a lot of play. How would you, if you were called to this office, how would you use your position to further encourage and grow this good, strong relationships between the three great Abrahamic faiths and everybody else? Because there's a lot of folks who are not part of these communities.
Well, my father, as I was growing up, and still is a Buddhist, ran a Buddhist retreat center, actually moved to France in 1992 to build a Buddhist retreat center, and then ran it. So I know a lot about Eastern religion, and one of the things I know, I would probably call myself a secular humanist, is that the one thing that they all share is the idea of compassion, not being attached to material possessions to a point where it rules your life, living in the moment, and coming together, that sense of community, and that's what it is. Forgiveness. I think that all those things are true. And I think that's what we are missing in our community right now. What we're missing right now is a willingness to come together in compassion, conversation, collaboration, and compromise. And that's what I want to return to the district, that level of discourse that is not prejudging someone before you're sitting down with them. For example, the assumptions that have been made about me since I decided to run. I've had people saying that I'm a child killer because I've said I want to have a conversation about McGinnis Boulevard. I've never even come out with a policy about it. And when people are prejudging me and saying those things, you know, you've lost the point of what a community is. So I want to return this discourse to a level of civility and take down the temperature a little bit and try and rebuild this splintered community where people have been separated into buckets based on stereotypes. And when you do that, you're no better than that which you're purporting to be, running your campaign against.
So let's do an easy one. Let's talk about McGinnis.
Sure. My favorite subject.
So you just said you have not put out a policy about McGinnis. The Assemblywoman has talked a lot about McGinnis. Mm-hmm. There are problems on McGinnis.
Absolutely.
We have had neighbors killed.
Mm-hmm.
We've had kids hit
Yep.
on their bikes. One of the members of my church, when he was in high school just a couple years ago, he was riding his bike on McGinnis, got hit,
Mm-hmm.
and ended up in the hospital. It's also one of the biggest industrial areas in the entire city.
Yeah.
We have people coming from the highways into the city since we don't have a railway.
Mm-hmm.
Everything that goes into the city, the clothing, drugs, pencils, everything has to come
Emergency
in by truck.
vehicles, also, that's the way they get around.
Exactly. So we also have a growing bike population, which is wonderful.
Yeah.
I heard you say you do not have a policy. The Assemblywoman has clear policy. She has spoken passionately and sometimes very well about it.
Yeah.
What would your policy be? How would you talk with, but more importantly, how would you listen to people who do not agree with you?
I think that listening is the most important thing that you can do. And again, this is a situation where there wasn't an opportunity to come together in conversation, collaboration, compromise. I'm also a certified mediator, and that's one of the principles of mediation, is that if you aren't willing to do that, then a third party is going to come in and make the decision for you, and everybody loses. And that's probably what's going to happen with the McGinnis situation. And who's going to lose? Our children. Who's going to lose? The people who want to ride bikes, because it's not going to work for everyone. Now, I'm a mother of a 12-year-old. I moved to Newell Street, which is on the other side of McGinnis, 5 years ago. At that point, my son was 7. Of course, I'm for pedestrian safety. I have a child. At the same time, I do believe that there are things that can be done to increase safety that don't necessarily mean cutting down our only main artery and diverting trucks and other possible. We already have problems with trucks. I mean, there was just a truck that was stuck on my street the other day that held up traffic for, half an hour. Trucks going down with the really narrow streets. That's already happening. Imagine what's going to happen when there is more limit to the, I know that I can't remember what the number is, 20,000 cars that already go down McGinnis right now. Emergency vehicles. That's the only way that they can get from A to Z to Woodhull Hospital. I just had a conversation with somebody here that her husband had a situation recently, had to go to Woodhull. That's our closest hospital, so how are we going to do that? We have a lot of young parents here. We have a lot of people who are having children. How are we going to get there? I've been doing a lot of research also about, ways that we can increase pedestrian safety and increase safety in these main thoroughfares. And there are lots of ideas that I think haven't been explored. Raised medians. Making the medians actually somewhere where we feel safe to stand. More crosswalks. The turn signals are really hard to follow, and then they, let traffic go to the right before you even have had a chance to walk. So things of that nature that haven't been explored yet. The other thing too is, again, I don't think anybody, to say that I am a murderer, which someone called me because I said that I want to have a conversation, is just ludicrous. And when we have that level of language that we're saying about people within the community who you don't know, you're going to have to sit with those people after this ends. And if you are deciding to build a family here and grow roots here, then you're going to have to see them every day. So let's take it down a little and talk together. The other thing I'd also like to say is the way it was done, again, it wasn't collaborative. And that's all people want. When I talk to people in the community who are concerned about the change, also concerned, most of them just say, I just wanted to be part of the conversation. That's all anyone wants, is to feel a sense of respect, not just push it off to the side because you've been a Greenpoint for your whole life.
So I had somebody wanted me to ask you this.
Yeah.
What is your favorite punk band and song?
Well, I was a punk rocker in high school.
No way!
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. This is a funny story. I saw the band The Descendants when I was pregnant at Roseland. I love the band The Dickies. They were a little, they sang the song Killer Clowns from Outer Space.
Okay.
From the soundtrack of the movie Killer Clowns from Outer Space.
I'm a Violent Femmes girl,
Yep.
so, but a lot of people are, so.
Yeah.
Okay, so I promised that I would ask that question.
I love it.
Thank
Please
you so
ask me more
much.
questions about things like that. I love it.
So, in our country, the Dobbs decision took away the guarantee of a woman's right for autonomy over our bodies, the right to have an abortion and to have abortion services. In this denomination, the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America, our official teaching is that people should take responsibility for their reproductive lives. Men should take responsibility for their reproductive lives. And that when a woman is pregnant and she has to face health concerns or whatever she may be facing, that abortion is something that we understand in terms of rape, incest, where the woman's life is in danger. Now that's a religious position, and is a very reasonable religious position as far as religious positions go, I believe. We have enacted strident laws that guarantee a woman's right to abortion up until 20-something weeks. We also make sure that women have access to birth control and that condoms are free and all over the place, or you can buy them also. However, we now no longer have the guarantee of abortion for women in this country, and there are abortion deserts in this country, so women are having to travel to have the reproductive health services that they need or want, and there are women who are facing miscarriages and pregnancies that should be terminated because the fetus is not viable. New York is an oasis when it comes to women's rights, to LGBTQIA rights, those sorts of things. If you are called to the State House, what will you say and how will you be a part of a larger conversation about women's autonomy and our rights, including the right to have birth control and the right to have abortion services? And I say the word abortion because people are hesitant to say that, but it is basic health care for women.
It's basic health care, and first of all, anyone who needs to have an abortion is probably facing a very severe emotional or health situation, and it's not something that we take lightly. I know people who had situations where they were forced to do it, and it was heartbreaking for them, and anyone who says otherwise is painfully wrong. First, I want to say that I was just given 100% rating by Planned Parenthood. Thank you. So I talked about conversation, collaboration, and compromise. This is one area where I'm not going to compromise. I believe that reproductive health care is a fundamental right, and it's not just about abortion is a very critical, important part of it, and a woman's autonomy over her own body is a right, and we need to make sure that nothing compromises the laws in New York State, and that we continue to be a sanctuary for women who are forced to travel to get an abortion. So I want to make sure that we shore up those and that nothing compromises them. You know, a lot of people talk about, you know, reproductive health care, Planned Parenthood. What are they getting at Planned Parenthood? It's abortion, but so much more than that. It's support with endometriosis. It's support with, you know, birth control pills aren't just something that you take because you're trying not to get pregnant. It's also something that you take if you have some other hormonal issues, and that's what a lot of people don't know about. I had horrific endometriosis, and I had to take birth control pills. And people just, again, it's about peeling back the onion and taking time to really understand something. And full stop, reproductive health care, a woman's right to choose, a woman's access to medicine that for her body, screenings, annual screenings, mammograms. I mean, that's all part of what a woman's bodily autonomy includes, and it's also about taking care of yourself. So those are things I would never compromise on.
Thank you. At our southern border, we have many people who are trying to make their way into our country. Some are trying to come through legal means to request asylum, and others are crossing, hoping to evade capture, and others are simply crossing and waiting to be arrested. Many of these new neighbors have been brought up to New York. Governor Greg Abbott has put them on buses and sent them to sanctuary cities across the United States of America. Many of them are on our streets and in our shelters, and we have enacted laws to force them not to be in our shelters after, say, 30 days. But the bureaucracy that would allow them to legally work so that they can do things like pay rent and become tax-paying neighbors and maybe eventual citizens. The bureaucracy is real. It's a federal issue. It's also a state and a city issue. If you are called to serve in the New York State Assembly, what will you try to do to help these new neighbors and to help the communities that are frustrated by their presence, because it can be a lot, and who are scared of them also, especially when we hear about bad behavior like attacking police, the motheads, robberies.
Yep.
We've had those on West Street.
We actually just talked to the captain about the robberies, and I can share a little information about what he told us.
You can do that, but also, what would you...
As an add-on.
Yes.
Yeah.
What would you do in Albany to help address this issue?
Well, one of the things that first of all, it is a federal issue, but you know there is city, state, community involvement. So I would collaborate with members of the community and do what I can to cut through this bureaucracy. One of the biggest problems is again the opportunity to work, and again that's what anybody wants. Why they're coming here, because you know for the most part, wanting to live a life of dignity and contribute to society and be part of a community. So the Path to Citizenship program that is being introduced in New York City, I think is a really good program to follow. That, you know, you just again, what am I going to say? It's the rollout and the operations. That's what needs to happen, is we have to have jobs trainings. We have to have an expedited opportunity to get a job. We have to have all of the support built in, because what is going to happen? People are going to go onto the streets. People are going to potentially turn to crime. And that's what happens, maybe be recruited into a gang. That's what happens when people aren't part of a community. And they might become part of a community that isn't the best one for them, that isn't going to help them reach the goals of why they came here to begin with.
And tell us what your conversation with the captain.
Oh my God, I just lost my train of thought. So he was talking about the people who are coming. He said that there's a bunch of people that are coming from Queens, actually. And they come on the mopeds, and they wear masks, like balaclavas, and they come over and they snatch things from people off the street and then take off. And they come in a gang of about 4 to 5 people. So it's important to be mindful of that. I've actually seen them in action going down Greenpoint Ave one day and going toward the bridge. So that's also what's happening. And a lot of people are already scared of e-bikes. And so this is also something that compounds that fear. And it is a real fear because people are being assaulted. They actually, the gang assaulted a couple of his officers and they were out of commission for about 2 weeks.
Sure. And then I know that y'all have questions. So please formulate your questions in your minds. And we will come to you after this. But you may remember there was a wonderful man who ran for mayor some years ago. And he was the most prophetic person I'd ever heard, and his catchphrase was, "Rent is too damn high." I just cussed the church. And Jesus agrees. So, the Simpkins, my wife and I moved out of this neighborhood in 2017 because we could no longer afford to live here.
Yeah.
I live in the Bronx. I've been the pastor of this church since 2015, and in that time we've received phone calls. We've received about 80 new members. The majority of them are no longer here because they could not afford to live in the city, in the neighborhood. They got married, they wanted to have children. New York City is the land of homeless. Most of us have only one child. That's what we can house. We see these luxury apartments going up on West Street. We are seeing the incarnation of zoning variances that were put in under the Bloomberg administration, that now we have these tall towers. We've tried to have conversations about including affordable housing, but when you are doing 80 to 120% AMI, area median income, qualifying people for these rents, affordable rent is still over $3,000. So we are losing many of our neighbors. We are having a brain drain, and we are going to continue to lose people who we would benefit from having them as our neighbors the most.
Yeah.
What is your plan? Because we need one to address the crisis of affordable housing in Greenpoint and Williamsburg.
Well, I can tell you, speak from experience, that I've had to consider leaving, but I am co-parent with someone and I don't intend to leave anytime soon, but my rent is almost $3,000 that I pay on my own. So I'm pretty cash poor. I work for a nonprofit. I can't afford the rent in the affordable housing. I mean, they're $3,600 for an apartment in this neighborhood. So I think one of the most important things is that, the other thing with all the luxury housing that's been built is that it wasn't done for the most part with union labor. And they're like the Arrested Development model homes. They have a lot of issues with them. I hear about mold and mildew problems with them, doors falling apart, doors not closing, smoke and mirrors, and that's what we're with now. So one of the most important things is, yes, we need more housing, but we also need it to be affordable, and we also need it to be union created, union built. We also need it to be LEED certified and sustainably built. We also need to incorporate a transition to renewable energy into those homes. However, one of the issues that I know a lot of people are facing who are living in affordable housing is that with the transition to renewable energy, which is, of course, what we want, gas prices, electricity is a huge expense for them now. So that's something that needs to be thought about as well. So I was looking at an apartment somewhere and I was astounded by how low the rent was. And then I looked at the fine print and it said includes electric heat. So those are some things that have to be thought about too. Again, it's in the operations and the rollout. So that's one thing that I think is very important, is that the housing that we're building is quality built and that people can stay there and afford it. The other thing is, we've got a lot of mom and pop, small owners of small buildings. I have multiple of them on my street who I talk to all the time. I have quite a few here who, they're not millionaires and they are just struggling to survive and they are just so glad that they have their home. But you know how they could become a millionaire? By selling and leaving the community, which is not what we want, and that's what is happening. So we also need to stop villainizing landlords. That's something that has become a battle cry of the Democratic Socialists. Not all landlords are bad. They just are happy to have a home. They worked hard for it their entire lives, and they deserve to be treated with respect. Another thing that is happening is the tenant adjacent Bill of Rights. That's something that's also really important that I know my mentor was trying to put together. Joe Lental is in the house. That's also very important. When you've got a big building, which is happening a lot here, you've got your, it's like the movie Up. You've got all these huge buildings being built around these little buildings, and what's happening is that it's affecting the infrastructure of the smaller homes. And remediation is incredibly expensive, and again, they're put in a position where they might have to sell and leave the neighborhood, and that's not what we want to see. I was talking to somebody the other day about Manhattan Avenue and the empty storefronts. You can get, go get a great mezcal cocktail and buy, all the succulents you want in this neighborhood, which is fabulous, but look at the empty storefronts. This used to be a thriving community with, I was talking to someone today who grew up in Williamsburg and used to come here to go shopping. That's what their family would do, and that's what I would like to see us return to, is that sense of community, is, people walking down the street and acknowledging each other, starting with hello. That's where it all starts, is not prejudging people and, putting the unity back in community is what we really want.
Thank you. Now, we have a microphone somewhere. If you would just stand, we'll hand you the microphone, and you do have to speak very closely to it. Tell us your first name and your question, please.
Can we have the first question from someone in the community, please? Sarah?
Hello.
Hello?
Yes.
No.
You're good.
Hi.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good.
Thank
How are
you.
you?
I'm well. Thank you. Thank you so much for doing this, being brave enough to get in front of a room of community members to answer our questions. My question for you is your thoughts on our CEC, which is a group of parents who were elected once upon a time and now don't seem to be allowing anybody else to run, even though there's vacant seats, and are pushing anti-Semitic agendas against our community. I would just love to hear your thoughts on them, and even though the Assembly is not in charge of the CEC, but what are your thoughts on how we can help get rid of them? Thank you.
Well, as my experience in education, I've learned about the way school districts run, and the responsibilities of the CEC is essentially the school board in our district. Everybody likes to change the name everywhere. And I also was on the school leadership team at PS 31 for a few years. And the job of the CEC is a parent group that's elected to represent the district. And represent the district with things like, oversight and accountability toward the school. It's also for, ensuring, providing that important input. What it is not about is inflicting any sort of political agenda on the school district or on the members. So that's what I think is not happening. They also need to adhere to the bylaws of the CEC, the bylaws that the city of New York has put together, that these people, actually the CEC, from what I understand, are paid a stipend. They're paid by the city to do a job, and that job is to represent the community, the school community, all members of the school community. And the bylaws are that you allow everyone to speak. The bylaws are that you are supposed to be meeting in person, and that's not happening. And you can't push people out of the conversation because they might disagree with you. And again, it's about being able to have difficult conversations. There are some difficult conversations to be had right now, and you should be able to do that if you're in a place of leadership. So again, our country, separation of church and state, separation of politics from our schools, and full stop, that needs to stop. And it's not happening. So I think that, I know that there's been, I'm not sure what the status is now, but the way it's been running, simply, they're not operating as a CCC.
Thank you for that.
Yep.
Hi, my name is Christopher Leon Johnson. I'm
Hello,
from
Christopher.
Crown Heights, Brooklyn, the borough. I want to know what's your take about congestion pricing. There's a lot of chatter online from, I can't say the name here because the opponent is for it fully with no exemption. So we want to know, are you for congestion pricing, or you're against it, or you're for it with exemptions? So we want to know what's your take on that. And one more question is, what's your take about the Berry Street situation, the open streets in the district? Will you do different from your opponent because she's for it, she's down with it? And then one more question is, what's your take about the North Brooklyn BID situation with Lincoln Wrestler and the North Brooklyn Park ran by? We want to know what's your take about the North Brooklyn Park situation, that they want to form BID within North Brooklyn, Greenpoint. And we want to know, are you willing to help the people in the district to stop it, because this is more like a grift and a scam. And the executive director admitted on camera that she was going to.
Yeah. Well, how it works practically, how it was formed. So there are ways. So I'm for exemptions.
Yes.
A lot of our teachers who cannot afford to live in New York City in the communities in which they teach have to live elsewhere. And that would put how much money that they'd be paying every day to go in and teach our children? Thousands of dollars a year. So yes, I am for that exemption. Again, there are nuances to things. We can't be 100% one way without thinking of the ripple effects to our working families. And there have to be things that are thought about, and there have to be exceptions. So that's my stance. In terms of Berry Street, that was something that was brought about. Open streets sound wonderful in theory, of course. That was something that was introduced during COVID, and it's continued to stay. But one of the concerns is ADA compliance, and again, inviting the people who are most affected into the conversation to talk about it and to talk about the model, and to when you're asking people to pay money into something, you have to be leery of that. The other thing too is that there are some businesses that are affected that aren't actually, street-facing businesses. There might be manufacturers and things like that. So what we can start off with is a merchants association that would allow people to be a part of and to collaborate and to work together on things that they can do to improve the district.
Thank you. This lady and then this lady.
First, it's not a question.
Hi.
Versus it's training. I've gone to many of these meetings. Nobody hearing you. They're not listening to you. I got the mic on, you're trying. When you come to talk, come up here. Look at your finger. Don't stand here. This is the worst place, and I have the right to say this because I did this for a living. What happens is, you see the acoustics, everything goes here.
5 minutes.
Right?
Barbecue.
All right. That's number one. Number two, I have an answer, and I would like to collaborate the way everything you've said all day all ties into each other. Mm-hmm. So obviously, gentrification means nobody can go. Then, of course, you got congestion. So everybody wins. No, everybody loses. Only the wealthy win, and the non-residents win. So I propose an idea.
Sure.
An idea that we should do this in city and the state. Mm-hmm. Not, obviously, you can't do it federally. Why is it rent a deduction on our taxes?
That's a very good question.
And particularly city and state, they're notorious for charging so much. Okay, it's one that can be done.
Yeah.
Second one, by the way, there is no crisis on the border. There is a crisis. It's a human crisis. I was just in El Paso, Texas. Okay, my brother is a commander in the military of the base, and my nephew works for those people who surveil. These people want jobs, and they want to be safe. That's all it is. And this country has continued to rape, exploit, and tear apart South America. These people don't want to come here. They want to stay home. And the talk that we're hearing in D.C. is bad.
Ms. Nancy,
That's it.
do you have a question?
No, that was
Okay.
it. But I want to tell her,
Okay.
can you get anybody here, these immigrants, can we do a program with Mayor Adams about getting these people in the village to work?
I would like to.
Okay, we're gonna do. Oh, okay, nothing.
No, speak into that, please. Hi, my name's Sheila. Into it, speak into it.
Into the mic, not like that.
It's all right. Don't.
And I just want to know, is the G train going to get any better? Because the service really is really bad.
Okay.
Well, I'm not in office
Wait,
yet.
her name was Sheila,
Hi, Sheila.
and she wanted to know if the G train was going to get any better.
I hope so. 24 hours that is going to outline all of this. We need safe, reliable public transportation that people actually want to use.
Thank you.
So it is 5:30, and we're going to do one more question. And I'm going to say that we're going to do two more questions because I've seen your hand. If that's okay with everybody? Okay.
You want to?
Hi, my name is Christine, and one of the things that haven't been touched upon here is the environment. And I'm an environmentalist who has fought for this community for the last 50 years.
Thank you.
And I would like to know whether you will be willing to help the Superfunds, particularly for the Superfund of the Newtown Creek, to help in the waters for the EPA. But as well, you have a lot to say about DEC when it comes to the uplands. All of the uplands are dirty. Everything is, it's got a lot of different contaminants, and they're all seeping in. So actually, what's the use? And there was also the chlorinated pool there. And one more question, how you feel about senior housing. Our community is getting really old, and most of the community by now.
Thank you.
So I live in the Meeker Plume, and my son has asthma. So obviously and I intend to continue to live here. Regardless of that, though, the environment here, there is a lot of work that needs to be done to remediate it. There's been also recently with the cleanup of Newtown Creek, there's been a lot of back and forth and finger pointing. Again, we need to come together and get this work done. How long have we been waiting? The Newhart building, a mess. I have friends who live right there, and then we also have the housing that's built right there. We have a lot that needs to be done here, and we need coordination from multiple parties to help get it done. Other concerns that I have are about, the housing that's built right on the river. It's not stable. I mean, we live in a flood zone. People's houses are being flooded every day. Every time there's a rainstorm, people have to, the water overflow from the big buildings is running into their homes. So there are a lot of issues that need to be tackled. And again, I'm committed to working with people, listening. We haven't talked about schools, and I know we don't have time. That's, something that I know deeply about, and I have learned about a lot of other things and know about a lot of things in the community from living here. But, again, this is an issue that is affecting people in the community. like the kitchen, it's not just a kitchen table issue, it's an issue that is affecting people's health and people's ability, to actually continue to live in this district. People are leaving. People are moving in here not even being told about this situation. So there has to be transparency. We have to come together. It needs to be safe. It needs to be equitable. Again, look at some of the areas that are experiencing the worst pollution. There is a lack of education and outreach. There's a lot of stuff that's posted on social media about meetings, but not everybody has the internet. Not everybody has Instagram. Not everybody even has a mobile device. So, when we're talking about outreach and educating people and pulling them into the conversation and telling them about what's affecting their day-to-day health, we need to have outreach that is multi-channeled, multi-pronged to make sure that people are
Yes, nice to officially meet you.
Yep.
I just wanted to circle back to housing really quickly because you made a lot of good points about small landlords and quality of build, but I believe the original question kind of spoke to the affordability of rent, and I wasn't sure whether or not I heard points about that in your answer. So
Well,
I wanted to know if there's anything that you wanted to say on that.
Well, we need to figure out a way that it can be truly affordable for people. It's almost institutionalized how bad it is here and how people can't afford it. It goes into so many things that need to be unraveled. But the bottom line, and it was something that I'm willing to work on and learn more about. Again, anybody who comes up here and says they know 100% about anything is lying. So it's something that I do need to learn more about. What I do know is that it needs to be addressed immediately. One other thing I'd like to say in terms of housing is NYCHA housing. We've been spending a lot of time there, and the profound neglect that we are witnessing there is criminal. These people have not had a visit from our assembly member. I'm sorry, I don't want to disparage anybody, but the first day that we went in to collect signatures, I met Josie on the top floor, on the 21st floor, and she was going on in our district. Okay, we have people who are left behind. Our seniors, talking about seniors. Again, 25% of our seniors live below poverty and aren't going to be able to afford to live their lives, the end of their lives in the community where they've been their whole lives, because in order to afford to live, they're going to have to sell their homes. And some of the things that we've seen recently in going to visit the senior centers, they don't have Pete McGinnis has a van that's 18 years old and the lift isn't working. How are people going to get there to actually socialize and not be isolated? In the NYCHA houses, the elevators are constantly breaking. They don't have a working kitchen. They haven't for a year. And just the other day, we were at the residents meeting and saw one of my friends there, and her hand was broken. And her hand was broken because it got stuck in the elevator and the sensor wasn't working. And she had to pull it out and she got her hand broken. And she's lucky her arm didn't get ripped off because it didn't stop. So we need to think about the whole community. We need to think about everybody in the community. We have to think not just about ourselves and the issues that are right here in front of us that affect just us. We need to think about everyone. And that's what community is.
Who's been here today. We are going to bring this portion of our time together to a close. We did run a little bit longer than I had planned. However, there is a cookout out front. Y'all are invited to stay. You can speak with Anathea then and ask follow-up questions. I recognize I didn't ask all the questions that you wanted asked because there's just not enough time in this format. But this is part of what it means to be in a democracy, to discern, to evaluate, and then to vote. When is the next time we get to vote? June 25th.
Early voting on June 15th.
Yes, so vote. It is part of our calling as citizens, and as people of faith, we also are called to vote. So I want to say thank you to everybody for being here. The president of our congregation, Gillette Achin, is here. If you have any questions about St. John's, Gillette wants to talk to you about it. If you have any questions that I can answer, I would love to talk with you about it. If you want to talk with Anabia about policy and ideas for how to solve issues, talk with her about it. But more importantly, talk with one another about it and vote. Vote early, vote by June 25th. Thank you everyone for being
Thank you,
here.
everyone.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.